All the runners, including the rather claustrophobic favourite, were soon safely inside. And just as soon, out again and racing.
Sir Ivor, 1968. My first derby as a bookmaker.
Lester Piggott and Sir Ivor begin that astonishing finishing burst.
Leicester goes and wins it on Sir Ivor, odds-on favourite. Combination was a stinker for the bookmakers.
Almost as if he'd grown wings like Pegasus, Sir Ivor flies to the post.
1981, what a combination this was. Wally Swinburne, the choir boy, and the great Shergar.
Coming up to the line, Chandler is going to win it at the line. Shergar is the winner, very easy winner.
2001, Galileo, trained by the maestro, the great Aidan O'Brien.
He's left them toiling, it's no contest. Galileo, a brilliant winner of the Derby.
2015, the combination of Frankie Dettori and Golden Horn.
And it is Golden Horn, driven out, remains unbeaten. Golden Horn won the Derby.
And as for last year, never in a million years could I have ever dreamt about sponsoring this race.
And August Rodin gains redemption in the Derby.
It's the biggest flat race in the world, and I am so proud to sponsor the Betfred Derby.
Hello and welcome to the Betfred Derby preview, the proud sponsor, the 245th edition of this fantastic race. I'd like to take Aidan O'Hara and Frankie Foster alongside me to preview this fantastic contest. And I say we are proud sponsors of the whole Betfred Derby Festival. So gents, it's got so much prestige and history. It is probably the world's most famous race. We're honoured to be sponsoring it. What do we expect though of a Betfred Derby winner? I've asked Aidan O'Brien, we'll ask him shortly. I'll ask Aidan O'Hara first.
Well, up to a few years ago, it was one of the easier races you could look at because you just had to have an Aidan O'Brien trained Galileo bred. And the field was very narrow, and it was great for big prices because you could rule out half of them, and he had all the stayers. Whereas last few years, the stayers the Derby horses are spread out more evenly among other stables. So it makes it a bit more difficult than it was before to try and find a long shot in it. But
it is the ultimate test of a thoroughbred, Frankie.
It is, yeah. And we mentioned Aidan O'Brien. He's got the favourite of both the Oaks and the Betfred Derby, of course. I'm really looking forward to it. It's such a great weekend of racing. The festival, I think, so well done, and the way that it brings all the locals together and the prestige you mentioned behind it. It's probably one of my favourites in the flat racing calendar. And the racing, particularly in the Derby, when they turn for home and they just pick up that into that extra gear, is a really exciting race to watch. So yeah, we'll try and find the winner of it. It's a wide open one, isn't it, this year?
It certainly is, yeah. Well, a man who does know what it takes to train Epsom Classic winner is Aidan O'Brien, as I say. 19 Epsom Classic winners he's trained across the Betfred Oaks and the Betfred Derby. It's the question that I put in: what horse do you need to win a Betfred Derby? I mean, what do you look for in a typical Epsom winner?
Yeah, Epsom's difficult track. I suppose they have to have speed, they have to have stamina, they have to be very agile, they have to have balance. A lot of things really, and they have to be able to handle the occasion on the day because there's a very tense atmosphere in Epsom the day of the races. It's a very unusual place. You have to canter the full way down to the start, and there's people at both sides of the rails. It's the ultimate test of a thoroughbred really, and some horses don't do much after because the race takes so much out of them, but that's what makes it so good. It's the ultimate test. They're tested in every way. Yeah, I suppose there's so many qualities they have to have really to handle the day and handle the race really. It's a very unique race. Probably it's the barometer for the thoroughbred breed every year really.
Absolute honour to be able to sit down with the Ballydoyle Master Aidan O'Brien, and we've got to start with him, haven't we? I'll start with Frankie first because it's a favourite, Aidan. City of Troy then. People think, is he going to do an Augusta Rodin like last year? But of course we've seen this week a little bit of a drift in the market. The ground is a concern. They said the ground was a worry in the Dewhurst when it was probably one of the most equally impressive juvenile performance. So is the ground key? Do these justify horses train on? There's so many questions around City of Troy. But he did say to us, Frankie, we have never sent a horse to Epsom with this much ability. And he's won 9 Betfred Derbies. Well, I was with you 12 months ago and we said, oh my God, why don't we just back Augusta Rodin after what he was saying? Are we going to be doing the same thing this year?
I know, it's funny, isn't it? You look at his run in the Guineas, you talk about do justifiers train on. I don't think the ground's too much of a concern because of how he performed on it previously. And you start scratching your head when Aidan O'Brien tells you this horse has so much ability, we have so much confidence in him. And as you said, and as he said last year, with Augusta Rodin, exactly that happened. And once Augusta Rodin did win, all of the connections, Aidan, Ryan, they spoke as if it was never in doubt. And they've done that again. And it's a real head scratcher. And it makes for an exciting watch, actually, because he does set the market. He sets the standard in terms of what horses we're talking about. And you have to make the decision. Are you with or against the comments versus what your eyes see? I find it hard when he's that short, but the more he drifts out as the week goes on, he starts touching 3-1. Could tempt me in, Matt.
It certainly could. And Aidan, I'm going to ask you the same question. But I said we went to Aidan O'Brien's, we went to Ballydoyle, and he just doubled down on what he said about this horse previously.
Yeah, I'd be worried about the ground on a mile for a mile and a half, though. Much more so than the ground wouldn't be a worry if it was. To me, it looks like a 10 furlong horse. I'm not sure about. I wouldn't be sure enough that he'd stay a mile and a half on soft ground to make him favourite for this. Say, even if you ignore the 2000 Guineas run, Los Angeles looks more the usual Derby type. But I wouldn't even given that he's almost certainly going to improve from the 2000 Guineas run anyway. I mean, he probably wouldn't be going if that was going to happen again. But I'd be worried about the ground. I think you'd want proper good ground to stay in a mile and a half.
Well, let's talk about Los Angeles then. You mentioned him. No issue with the ground with him. Group 1 winner over in France as a juvenile on very soft ground. He's unbeaten. He's 3 from 3. I was there at Leopardstown when he won last time out. A slowly run race, a small field, and yet he was strongest at the line. Another 2 furlongs, Aidan. Is he potentially be the number 1 for Ballydoyle?
I mean, it's possible that the two of them are, going to be clear of the rest. We really don't know. It's an odd derby in that the farm there's so many decent chances in it, but they're just typical of he's typical of other Aidan O'Brien derby winners, and I quite like the horse he beaten that in third at a big price as well. Euphoric. Maybe Los Angeles had a better run in the race. Leopardstown coming down the outside is an advantage, so he came down the outside late. I mean, he's unexposed. But Los Angeles he's unbeaten, I think, isn't he?
Yeah,
so,
3 from 3. Yeah.
And I mean, he is going to improve at a step up and trip, but I don't think I'd have either of them at the price they're at, regardless.
Okay, we'll get something in a minute. Los Angeles, Frankie.
See, the benefit you get of City of Troy drifting in the market, you suffer with Los Angeles shortening up. And I think as an each way, like a real soft each way bet at kind of 6s was at the start of the week, I could be with him because he's unbeaten, he looks consistent, he seems to be getting better with each run. I think he will definitely stay. He's got lots of positives, but will one maybe just have a turn of foot that might get the better of him? So I wouldn't be backing him at his price now, but I could understand people that are with him. For me, if you've got 2 Aidan O'Brien horses that make it to post, I'm not going to go against the one that Ryan sat on.
No, there is that. We'll talk about the trials. You mentioned the trials. They have kind of muddied the waters somewhat, but the Lingfield trial was probably, with Arabian Crown now sadly out, the most impressive in Ambiente Friendly, who flew down the outside to win by 4.5 lengths. And obviously we've had other talk about the jockey switch as well. What do you make of Ambiente Friendly?
Oh, I'm trying to tell myself, and maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I think he might have been flattered in that. He was obviously impressive, 5.5 lengths, but looking at the rest of the field, Illinois, who's in there, was good as a 2-year-old. He hasn't performed near that as a 3-year-old. I don't know if that's too strong a form. I know the third has won since, but it was only a listed race. He was impressive in terms of how he looked and the distance he did it by, but I don't know if the form's as strong as others. So I think maybe we've got carried away with him a little bit. He's one that I'd be willing to take on at his price.
Yeah, he's not bred for a mile and a half, but he saw it out well at Lingfield.
Sorry.
All eyes on you, Ed.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Frankie there. I actually think Illinois, I wouldn't mind seeing him in this race, but he had a far harder race. He was roused along earlier, and then Illinois pulled clear of the others behind. And I just thought Ambiente Friendly had an easier race of it. And I mean, he looked very good, but I would not. I know it seems like I'm always saying this at the top of the market, but I don't think if Illinois runs in this, I don't think he'd be very far behind Ambiente Friendly, because it's just the run of the race. The way that race ran, everything suited him. I wouldn't be sure the same is going to happen in the Derby.
Well, there's a bit of controversy last week, of course, with the jockey switch. Callum Shepherd losing the ride despite winning on him at Lingfield. Rab Havlin going to be the man in the place. What do you have to say about Ambiente Friendly?
He's a nice horse, obviously. He's still quite raw. I rode him 2 candles at Warren Hill yesterday. I'm going to do the same tomorrow. I'm going to gallop him on Saturday. I'd like to sit on him again, once or twice next week again. So just want to find out as much as possible about the horse. To say, look, he is a late maturing horse. His best days are still in front of him, and I'd say, everything looked pretty smooth at Lingfield, so he's ticked a lot of the boxes already. It's just whether he's good enough on the day.
Yeah, so that's Ambiente Friendly. What about Ancient Wisdom? I mean, in a better luck, granted better luck for Godolphin, they'd have had 3 big chances coming in this year. The tragedy of Hidden Law at Chester, losing Arabian Crown, who's arguably one of the most impressive trial winners from Sandown, means they've got this fella who went off favourite for the Dante. Soft ground could be key. He's going to have his conditions, Frankie.
Yeah, and you look at the Futurity Stakes last year, ran on heavy ground. Devil's Point was in second, who's won the French 2000. God's Window is a funny horse who hasn't really materialised into anything. I thought would turn into a good horse, but it's been disappointing. But then in 4th, 5th and 6th, you've got Deira, Dancing Gemini and Diego Vallecas. So looked a really strong Futurity Stakes on heavy ground, and that would definitely give him more chances the softer the ground goes. And I suppose if you were trying to kind of bring up his York performance, that's a very different track and conditions that he raced on there behind Economics, and I think he got done for a little bit of a turn of foot by the winner on what will be quicker ground, so I think he would want it slower. My worry is quick ground at York would probably be a better predictor of a Derby winner maybe than a heavy ground Futurity Stakes, although that is what Auguste Rodin won as a 2-year-old before winning the Derby. But I think I would have liked to see him maybe have that little turn of foot at York to keep up with the winner, but I suppose softer ground does blunt that in some horses. So a chance if it's soft or slower for me.
He's been well backed, Aidan, because of the ground, Ancient Wisdom, but granted bad luck for Godolphin, as I say, he could have been their 3rd string coming in here.
Yeah, I think he's too short. He got well beaten. It wasn't just that he was beaten in the by Economics, it was the other horses in the Cambridge, not very far away there either. I think it needs to be heavy ground, like proper heavy ground. I'd say he's just consistent. So he's a consistent maybe 112, 113, 114 horse. I'm not sure, is he going to improve that much? I'd be surprised if he won on anything other than on heavy ground, which even though it's going to rain, I'd say it's unlikely enough that it's going to be actually heavy. I mean, we don't know, but yeah, I think he's too short.
It does drain well, doesn't it? It's chalk base, it does drain pretty well. I think a dry Friday, which is what we're forecast, then we'll be on the soft side of good. I think that is pretty much for sure. It was pretty soft when you and I went there, Frankie, for the gallops morning. We saw 4 horses work, Deira, Macduff, Voyage and Dancing Gemini. And we left there thinking, do we back all these each way? Because each and every one of the connections were pretty much fancying their chances. More so, I think, Dancing Gemini, because he was coming off the back of that second in the French Guineas. Yeah,
so clearly has a bit of speed and handles the track. And
he's bred more for this, isn't he?
Exactly, yeah. And I think for Roger Teal to go there and that make up his mind when he really wants to pick up that Group 1 with this horse and had thoughts of maybe taking on an easier Group 1, says that all boxes are ticked to go and have a crack with Dancing Gemini. So, yeah, Roger Teal seemed positive. Rosser was very positive, I thought. About Macduff. He was talking obviously about the form, the second to Arabian Crown, who you've mentioned. He was pretty convinced that Macduff would take a step forward for that and maybe just got done in the closing stages of the race for a bit of fitness. So there's positive vibes from Rosser. Voyage obviously is going to benefit from going to the track, having just the one start. I think maybe rain might go against Voyage. You'd probably like to see him run on quicker surface. He looks like a pretty sweet traveller. And by Golden Horn, who won his derby on good to firm. And then Deira, who is an interesting one. Didn't look too flashy, did he, last time out?
No, but I'd say he won that Windsor Maiden, got his confidence boost. And
exactly.
Yeah, the connection is say he's taking a massive step forward, and all of a sudden, There's a bit of blue and shaker. Those prices starting to tumble. Aidan, there's 4 outsiders that say Frankie and I were lucky enough to see on Gallop's morning. Any of those for you?
Not really. I mean, a horse running the Derby on his second go, Voyage. I wouldn't mind maybe later on in the year. Macduff, from his race, I prefer Portland, who maybe isn't running here, but he's 100th. You know, I can't be sure of what we can't be sure what Aidan's going to run. Really, he said he's only running 3, but then I read something else. No, I read something else this morning where he's not ruling out. And I mean, if I prefer Portland than Macduff, I can't have him at the price that he's there at the moment. Dancing Gemini, the French 1000 Guineas was on soft ground. I mean, that's at least he's got Group 1 form, classic form of those ones. Deira, Mila, that just won a novice event.
Yeah, he was 5th in the Futurity, wasn't he?
Yeah, there's a hell of a way.
Yeah.
There's a long way to go normally in any standard Derby anyway, so it's hard to
see.
The
owner, I think he's got 2. He's got Sadati as well. And he's had 2 massive price horses placed, Hu Yamal, and I'm trying to think of the other one as well. He's got 150 to 1.
I think the fact that he was 4th in the Futurity Stakes on his first start for Owen Burrows is a little bit of a good sign, in my opinion. You'd be sending them, obviously, with what they've done at home, but a 50 to 1 4th, and then from that they probably decided to have a crack at the Derby, and he wouldn't have been fully tuned up for a Windsor novice, would he? And just did what he needed to do. So he's got to be better than his form, but as Aidan says, probably quite a large step forward to take, even on what he's shown.
Right, now's your time to shine then, Aidan. We're going to talk about the outsiders. What at a price do you like you're going to hang your hat on?
At the moment, after watching a lot of those trials again, I quite like this Bellum Justin. He looks like he's improving.
Course form.
And yeah, course form, and I think he won it a bit easier than what it looked at the time. And Chief Little Rock was 3rd, who's won relatively easily in the Curragh this weekend. I just like him. I think he's improving. And of the other, when you really don't know with these trials, you really don't know what they mean until you get to the big day. But I thought he was impressive enough that I'm more interested in him at 25 to 1 than some of the other trial winners between 6 and 10 to 1. You know, I just thought he looked like he's improving. And, you know, the course, that having gone on the course already, I know that trial, I kind of ignore these things anyway. I know that trial doesn't have a good actual Derby record, but I'd be happy enough with him now. I think he's good value. And I'm not sure it would be a 25 to 1 surprise for a horse that's improving the way he is with course form in what might be a substandard Derby.
I think that's the key, isn't it? I think we asked all the trainers who run a horse at Gallop's morning, because they were all outside, is saying it is the kind of year with question marks over City of Troy to throw your hat into the ring, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And there's plenty in there that are around the 20 to 1 mark that you can definitely make a case for. So I think it's a case of having a few bets in the race, probably.
Extra places.
Yeah, exactly. Take advantage of all of that. And hey, make for great viewing if they're all swinging, turning home, won't it?
Yeah, it certainly will be. Right, go on then. Time to summarise. I'll start with you, Aidan.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of hoping Say Here Try does do something remarkable, maybe, because I'm not sure anything else in the race is going to do that. Maybe Los Angeles, but it's just too risky. You know, I don't think, especially with the ground. So I'm looking forward to it. I never mentioned the outsiders. I also kind of I like Illinois if he runs, and I like Euphoric. Euphoric was not very far behind Los Angeles in that trial, and again, you know, Los Angeles got a better run wide in Leopardstown, which is an advantage. Quite like Euphoric as well, but it's an exciting race. And at the moment, you know, I'm just going to be trying to find an outsider, hopefully an extra place or two.
So Bellum Justin, though, what that'll be?
Yeah, Bellum Justin at the moment, and probably because he's the most likely to go Euphoric each way.
I haven't mentioned Table Talk. They've stumped up 75 grand, and he's about 6,600 to 1. He's going to come in the first 4 to recoup the money. I mean, that's a bold shot as well, isn't it? But that's what we go back to. Throwing your hat into the ring for this derby, because it does look wide open. Go on, Frankie, give us your winner.
Can I say a son of Camelot will win? You've got Los Angeles, Dancing Gemini, and Deira Mile to go out. There's your
three gates of field.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
If I have to land on one, I am going to go with Dancing Gemini. He's been to the track. He was second in the French 2000. He looks ground versatile. He's by Camelot. I don't think the step up in Triple B a problem, and he could draw on a turn of foot in any ground.
I tend to agree, you know. I want City of Troy to go and do something special. That'd be absolutely fantastic for this derby. It's the 245th running. And he is the most likely. He's got the X factor. Aidan O'Brien has got the X factor, and if he can, it'd be absolutely scintillating. But I think, and he's a horse that you think you can hang your hat on to run his race. Very impressive at Doncaster in the Betfred Flying Scotsman on soft ground. Then he was obviously like 5th in the Futurity. All right, that was heavy ground, but he showed that he handles the ground and he's more bred for this test.
He plugged on a bit for the French as well, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He did. I think he's a knocking bet. And to say he's been there, we saw him and we spoke to Roger Teal and William Cox just after he rode him, and they said, why not have a crack?
Yeah.
They were pretty keen. So I think Dancing Gemini as well. One thing I must talk about, I know you've said, and you just kind of said you don't ignore all the talk of that, is the draw. Because statistically, Stall 10 is the most successful with 11 winners since starter stalls were invented in 1967. Yet Stall 11 next door has never had a winner. And Stall 2 has never had a winner as well. I know you put nothing into that, but it must be something when you've got very successful stalls at certain points. And like I said, the inside has always been a bit of a negative, hasn't it?
Yeah, I took one stat from your research, Matt, and that was 11 of the last 13 winners drawn between 5 and 12. So I think that's what I'd be hoping for from my selections, is somewhere in that mix. I'm not going to get too specific into definitely want that draw or wouldn't want that draw. If I owned a Derby runner, probably 11 would be the one I wouldn't want, just because obviously no winners from it, and just that small gap as you jump to 11, so you're on the inside of a slightly wider group and not many winners around you. So I'd want to be avoiding 11 and in the mix of 5 to 12. That'd be optimal, but you're not going to get carried away, I don't think.
And you told us you want to be in 2 and 11.
No, yeah, I will take Bellum Justin. I want him in 2 because I think he's already overpriced and he's just going to drift. And the draw in a 1.5 mile race, which actually turns both ways, is way overstated. It's just the look of what type of horse has been in 11 that might have needed to be on the inside, or what type of horse has been in 2. It's look. I won't have it, simply because if 10 is the best and 11 is the worst, it can't make sense. Just can't. There's no sense to it. There's just no sense to it. So happily, because I'm looking at price and only price, I want my 2 in 2 and 11, and I'm happy out. Because there'll be a bigger price.
Well, it could be a big field. But let's turn our attention then for the Betfred Derby and talk the fillies in the Betfred Oaks. So we've had the trials for the Derby, so it's kind of muddied the waters. Nothing really stood out. Whereas in the Oaks, we've had a lot of really encouraging and quite impressive trials. I mean, Ylang, the favourite. Okay, she was 5th, but that was 5th in a 1,000 guineas, a classic, beaten in a length in a bunch finish.
Yeah, and staying on as well. Watching it, I watched it back this morning. For a second, you start to question, is she going to fade? And then just picks up again, which, as you said, 5th, but you'd be very encouraged by that run now coming to Epsom. And Aidan O'Brien's won 6 of the last 10 runnings of the Oaks, so he's obviously going to have a strong hand, and he's got the top 2 in the market. Lang and Ruby's a Red, who we'll get onto this, but I definitely have over the 2 Rafe Beckett fillies, who she was storming home, chasing down. You Got To Me and Treasure were both in that same race, and I couldn't be close to backing either of them. Aidan might tell you difference because they're 3 times the price of Ruby's a Red, but I'd be pretty sweet on both of his runners. And then plenty of other trials, Matt, that have been impressive. Chester always stands out in my mind because I'm there through the season, and before the race I fancied Forest Fairy because of what she did previously round a bend on the all-weather. She just looked really balanced when she was going around the bend. And I got sucked in to the money coming for the Joseph O'Brien horse. I've been done too many times when I go against the Joseph O'Brien Raider in England and he just goes and romps home. So I didn't back Forest Fairy that day, but she ended up winning, and I thought was as impressive, going around a tight turn at Chester, really well balanced. It doesn't seem to do anything to her speed or her travelling at all. And I think she was maybe only just hitting top gear on the line. And I think a touch further, will handle the track no problem, I think. And if is allowed to quicken when she wants to, rather than Ross had to wait for a bit of a gap, I'm pretty sweet on Rafe Beckett's Forest Fairy. I know he's sending a few, but that's Ross's choice and be my choice as well.
Interesting. He's got 4 of the 12, so third of the field. I'll come back to the Ballydor course in a minute, because you've obviously mentioned to me you like the Rafe Beckett horse and the Cheshire Oaks, but not the one that finished in front.
No, I like Seaward at a huge price, especially with the four place a race like this. I thought, it more or less went into the lead, and they eased it quick enough once the other stable, once the other horse passed it. But that's going to improve, I'd be fairly sure. I got in that race, that particular race, Forest Fairy beat a horse of, was it Dunnick or Aidan O'Brien? Another Fairy. And I was really wanting to see that horse again, the horse that was second, so it's not here and it's not in there. Port Fairy, I just felt now that was a definite going to be improving the next time. So that's drawn me on to, well, if I was that interested in Port Fairy, I've got to be interested in Seaward. Seaward eased off 50 yards from the line, jogged over, only a length behind Forest Fairy. So it's kind of an easy long shot, I think. I think she's going to improve.
It was interesting because I asked Rafe Beckett at the Gala this morning just what he was thinking of running, and this was the filly that he said has taken a big step forward from Chester. So that was really eye-catching. We go back to Ruby's Are Red, though. I mean, obviously she absolutely flew him. She came from a mile back, and I know with both things they should reverse that form around, but did she handle the contours of Lingfield? Will she handle the contours of Epsom? Why was she so far behind?
That's the question, isn't it? How did she end up so far behind? Maybe a mix of everything you've just said, Matt, to be honest. Maybe Ryan had to just ride at a slightly steadier pace to handle the contours of the track. The You Got Me on the front was ridden prominently and went for home first. So it probably all kind of played into each other. And I'm not sure who will end up riding her, but I suppose that would be, or Wayne Lorden's actually. Wayne Lorden, yeah. That would be his job to try and figure out, because you can't chase a pace that's quicker than the one that your filly wants to go. You know what I mean? If a strong pace is set and she doesn't want to travel as quick as that, then she might end up in the same position again. And it won't matter how strongly you finish if you're far back at Epsom and there's something on the front that's going well and kicks, you do pretty well to catch them. So a tricky ride for Wayne Lorden. And again, our 2 horses at the top of the market. You've got Ryan Moore on one of them. And,
Wayne Lorden on the other.
I know where my money would be going.
Copy and paste, isn't it? Sticking with Ireland, Dermot Wells got a really interesting contender in Azealia, who's been really well back last week.
Yeah. I think it's too short. The farm hasn't really worked out.
No.
And I think people
was 5th in the Irish 1000.
Yeah. People sometimes get excited about Dermot Wells, Aga Khan trained horse. I mean, and he has had plenty of good ones, but I'd have wanted that farm to work out a bit better, I think. At that price, it'd be fine if she was in here at a much bigger price. But like Rubies Are Red, the race does stink of the 2 Aidan O'Brien horses finishing first and second here. I think I just don't know. Ylang Ylang is going to run to whatever, 118. I'm not sure what it takes to win an average. She's almost certainly going to run well. They're Galileo and Frankel. There's going to be no problem with the ground. They're going to stay. It just means something else has to be, it's not going to end up being a weak Oaks, I don't think. Those 2 are certainly. And Rubies Are Red. The handling the course, I'm not sure I've ever heard, but I would kind of assume that on softer ground, handling the course is easier than on good firm.
Yeah.
It should, in your head, it should be. Yeah. It should be
pace.
easier.
It's got more of a camber.
It's a steadier pace. They're getting their toe in. Whereas when you're going around, say, Tottenham Corner, and it's good to firm, there's you're kind of bouncing, and it has to be slippery. Whereas on soft ground, you're getting your toe in a bit. Pace is going to be slower. I'd say the course. I'm sure it'll be good to soft in places, something like that anyway, which I think might help the likes of Rubies Are Red. I think we can be fairly sure she's going to be finishing very fast, very fast there.
Caught You Looking, that was 3rd behind Azealia, Dermot Wells filly that you just mentioned.
All Maids.
Yeah, 66-1 or something around that sort of mark. Wasn't far behind Azealia, is 10 times the price and seems to be getting better with every run. I think she might outrun her odds. I don't know quite if she'd be good enough to get in the mix, because as you mentioned, that form from Navan hasn't really worked out. The 2nd and 3rd have both been pretty well beaten since. But I think she's getting better the further she goes. She's by Harzand, who was your 2016 Derby winner. And at 10 times the price of Dermot Wild's filly, that would be my pick from the race.
What about Secret Satire, the Musidora winner? Now, last year we were sat here thinking about the Musidora, Soul Sister won that at a massive price, then came on to win this. Secret Satire won the Musidora as a massive price, and you've already tipped up one Andrew Baldwin runner this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be tempted with the each-way double on the two of them. And this one's form has worked out. That race at York, it won that well and looked like it had sort of got the hang of race and really put the head down and went away from a horse, Francophone, and like the form looks strong. That looks a very good trial, and beat a horse that was also. It's just overall that's a very good. It's similar to the other one. It's one of the best trials, but it's underestimated a bit, I think. I think she's a bit of value.
She stayed on surprisingly well, I thought. You know. Watching it, I thought maybe her race was ran and it was going to be a question of her holding on to win the Musidora, and then she actually, as Aidan said, ended up going away and could have a mix of everything. Bred by Advertise, 6-7 furlong quick horse, and Out of a Dam who won over 10 furlongs on heavy ground, showed a bit of speed at York, but also stayed on, going a little bit further. It's a bit of an unknown about her, isn't there? Don't quite know what you're going to get on the day. And I think that Sheen Murphy said that. Whether or not she stays, you'll find out. But there's that classic Lester Piggott line, isn't there, about horses that you almost don't want a horse that you know is definitely going to stay because they'll be too slow at Epsom, for the Derby rather than the Oaks. But I'm sure it applies to both. So
yeah,
a horse with a bit of speed about them, and the way that she just was tough to stay on at York, I agree, kind of makes the shortlist.
Go on then. Narrow that shortlist down to one, please.
Where am I going to go? Forest Fairy. Just like I said, I think the key thing with her is just how balanced she looks going around a tight turn on those two tricky tracks. And I don't think she might have hit top gear, but only on the line. So I think there's a bit more in her. Okay.
I would go for Ubers I Read, but I can't really put up a maiden in a classic, I don't think. So I think it does go to Bardot. I think Ylang. I think you're right. I think they do set the standard, certainly on that classic form. Aidan?
Yeah, look, I'm going to be going with Seaward anyway. And that'd be my main. I presume that'd be my main bet. I just think that's very good value. I mean, you're asking me to narrow it down. I'm going to add one in instead, right? So I like Secret Satire. To me, the price might be starting to go on that, so I probably end up losing interest. But Dance Sequence, I had a look at Dance Sequence runs, and even though ridiculously it's only run at Newmarket, I think I don't think it really acted that well on Newmarket. It was all over the place in all its races. I don't think it's going to be too much of a surprise now. I know Epsom is, it's similar, but look, let's hope that the ground is good to soft in places. I think that'll help acting on the course. But she might be an outsider as well that might fulfil what they thought potential she would have had before the 1,000 guineas. She didn't get an ideal run there, and she sort of was sticking the head in the air. She didn't really, wasn't ideal, I don't think. This might suit her a bit better, but look, I mean, I'm narrowing to one. I'm certainly back in Seaward anyway.
Okay, right. Seaward then for Aidan. Right, before we wrap up, just a quick look at the Coronation Cup as well. Only 5 go to both. Emily Upjohn, short price favourite to retain her title. No Frankie in the plate though.
No, I really like the French horse. Feed the Flame. Emily Upjohn's best runs have actually been on Good to Firm, and last year she beat Westover, which obviously looks like brilliant form, but it was Westover's first run, and it was a brilliant ride by Frankie. He came down the outside, and he was 3 lengths clear before Westover realised. Westover's doesn't have a quick turn of foot, but he went after then, but it was too late. It was just a brilliant ride of Frankie on the fast ground, and it worked out. But I think if this is good to soft in places, I would think this Feed the Flame. It's already had 2 runs in France on softer ground. It's one bit of poor form is in the Arc. It finished 7th or 8th, but that was, if you remember, they were calling that ground good, but I think it was firm, which would not have suited him at all. And his last, so he had a poor run first in France. His last run has really worked out. He looked the best horse in it, and the horses that were first and third have in another head bob and Group 1 finish in France this weekend. Horizon Door, and I can't remember the name of the other horse, but he's 5-1, and Emily Upjohn is 4-6, something like that. I would think he's a better chance of winning than Emily Upjohn, which is that's a considerable, because Luxembourg is in it. If the ground is softer, Luxembourg might struggle to stay 12 furlongs in softer ground. I'd really fancy him now, I think.
What about our old mate Hamish? The ground's coming for him. I know he's not quite Group 1 level, but if he has his conditions...
Yeah, I think the key there is he's not quite Group 1 level. I mean, what a cracking horse. Is it 4, 5 Group 3s on the bounce? But Group 3s... I'd love to see him win. Just don't think he's quite up to the standard. I actually agree with Aidan. I think the French horse has a cracking chance. And I think just looking at the way that he's been campaigned so far this season, was 5th on his reappearance run, but over 10 furlongs on heavy ground, maybe not quite tuned up, needed the run, and then a brilliant 3rd last time in a Group 1 to then come here into this race over slightly further again, and has put in a massive performance as a 2 or 3-year-old in the Prix de Gournay. The Prix de Paris over a 1.5 miles. So has that 1.5 miles form. Looks like this has been the plan. And a bit of rain, certainly won't mind that. So yeah, I think it's a great price actually for Feed the Flame.
Oh, Feed the Flame. Unanimous for the French Raider in the Coronation Cup. Right, before we do say cheerio, just want to wrap up your Betfred Derby picks. First of all, Aidan.
Well, I have to go back to the Betfred Derby here now. I like Bellum Justum, and I'm going to say Euphoric each way. Bellum Justum and Euphoric both each way. And realistically, I'm hoping City will try in Los Angeles have a huge run in them, just to make it a really top class derby. But I like Bellum Justum and Euphoric.
Frankie?
Dancing Gemini for me, by Camelot, has that turn of foot, goes on any ground, and Roger Teal was confident after having a spin round Epsom. And about 2 minutes before the off, I'll have a small bet on City of Troy, no doubt, because I can't see him win without having a penny on. So
last year, exactly the carbon copper last year.
Yeah. Dancing Gemini now, and then I will talk myself out of it, and then I'll just follow what the master says.
There we are. We cannot wait for it. All set up nicely. It's going to be soft ground at Epsom, but we're all looking forward to the Betfred Derby Festival, and in particular to be proud sponsors for the 245th running of the Betfred Derby.
All the runners, including the rather claustrophobic favourite, were soon safely inside. And just as soon, out again and racing.
Sir Ivor, 1968. My first derby as a bookmaker.
Lester Piggott and Sir Ivor begin that astonishing finishing burst.
Leicester goes and wins it on Sir Ivor, odds-on favourite. Combination was a stinker for the bookmakers.
Almost as if he'd grown wings like Pegasus, Sir Ivor flies to the post.
1981, what a combination this was. Wally Swinburne, the choir boy, and the great Sugar.
Coming up to the line, Chandler is going to win it at the line. Sherdar is the winning, very easy winner.
2001, Galileo, trained by the maestro, the great Aidan O'Brien.
He's left them toiling. It's no contest. Galileo, a brilliant winner of the Derby.
2015, the combination of Frankie Dettori and Golden Horn.
And it is Golden Horn, driven out, remains unbeaten. Golden Horn won the Derby.
And as for last year, never in a million years could I have ever dreamt about sponsoring this race.
And August Rodin gains redemption in the Derby.
It's the biggest flat race in the world, and I am so proud to sponsor the Betfred Derby.